Hi there, it's James from Junior Developer Central, and I wanted to cover today a question that I came across in a forum the other day, and it covers a couple of different things about manipulating elements on the page and actually finding HTML elements using JavaScript as well. So I was just browsing and I found a question of someone asking, how can I actually get the value of a selected item in JavaScript? So what they actually meant was a select box that they'd created with a list of values, and then they'd wanted to use JavaScript to find out what the user actually selected. So I've actually got the code. This is the actual code that they were trying to use. They were trying to actually get a list of cars, and then I don't know whether it was an example that they gave or a project they were working on, but this is what they actually had. So they got the select box, and how in JavaScript do you kind of actually get these values? Okay, so let's have a look at how to do that now. So I've put this into a HTML document and actually loaded it up into my browser. And what I'm going to do is, just to demonstrate this, is use the developer tools to actually access that element and its value. So as I said, it's sort of two parts really. You've got to first of all select the elements using JavaScript, and you can do that by the query selector function. And there are different options that we could take here, but because there's only one select element on the page, I can literally just say use the query selector to get the select element that's there. Okay, so it's simple as that. So if I was to actually run that, you can see it retrieves the HTML element that we've kind of defined in the text editor a moment ago. So and this is dead simple. All you need to do to actually get the value of it is, unsurprisingly, say .value after the end, and you can see, because I've actually selected Volvo at the moment, that's the response that I get when I try and query it with JavaScript. Just to prove that it actually works, if I choose a different car such as Fiat and rerun that command again, I'm getting the actual value for Fiat instead. Notice as well, you're not actually getting the bit of text that's inside of the option tag. So Volvo, Saab, Fiat and Audi, they're all capitalized, whereas the results I'm getting back don't have a capital letter at the start, and that's because the actual value that you get is what's specified in these inside the option tag there. So that's pretty much all there is to it, really. There's probably a couple of things that I would refine from this if you were kind of building this into a form or into a larger page. First of all, is really this code would be better if it had like an ID for the select box, so you can target that one specifically. So I might just call that cars as well for this example. And what I can do then is, when I'm looking at the page, I can actually do the query selector again, and then I can just give it the ID of cars. Oops, make sure I get my quotes right. And then do the same thing again, and that's just making it a bit more specific. If I've got more than one select box on the page, it's easy to kind of differentiate between the two, and it's just making the code a little bit cleaner as well. So some of you might be shouting out at the screen right now, but you can use get element by ID, and yes, you're right, you can. You can use get element by ID function, and you don't need to actually put the hash in there for the car's ID value, and it does exactly the same thing. So you can use that option as well. It's up to you which one you want to go with. So that's all great. The person who raised the question didn't actually go into any more detail as to what they actually wanted to do with it, but I suspect maybe they wanted to kind of have like some kind of button or something on here. So you know, something like this, where they wanted to kind of set up an event listener, so when that button's clicked, it actually kind of retrieves that value. So we can do that pretty simply, and I'll do this in the page now so we can just load it up and get it working. So I'm going to use the query selector again to get the new button element that we just created, which is the check car, and I'm going to add an event listener, and I'm basically going to say when the button is clicked, I'm going to do this function, which will do what we were doing in the developer tools console a second ago. We'll get the cars select element and get its value, and I don't know what we'll do with that. We'll just alert it out at the moment just to show that that value is being retrieved. It could be something a bit more complicated in reality. Maybe it's kind of checked to make sure that there's the right combination. So maybe you can't, if you've got a budget limitation, maybe you can't hire an Audi if that's what this kind of form's all about. We just don't know. So yeah, we've created our button, and obviously it'll kind of listen for the click event, and it will retrieve the value that's been selected in there. So just to kind of give it a bit of context and maybe a more useful situation as to why you might want to retrieve that value, because it needs to be checked and kind of do some further work with it. Okay, that's it for this video. So hopefully you've learned a little bit about the way to query elements, and also how to retrieve values for form elements too. And also we looked at how to create event listeners as well, very briefly. So we've got a complete example there now of how that person might want to create a select box and actually retrieve that value via JavaScript. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please feel free to subscribe and like the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.